welcome to today's episode of CJ Discusses, where we're going to discuss the latest episode of The Challenge, Season 40, Battle of the Eras. We restart this episode with a recap of the current relationships in the house. We know that Michelle is dating Devin, who is no longer on the show. Theo and Olivia are an item, as well as Kylan and Naya. All three of those women were selected last week as targets by Johnny, so we know that this week it's going to get pretty spicy. I'm just trying to see who's going to go into the elimination, as well as we know that more relationships are going to have some issues, as somebody's going to get eliminated or potentially get eliminated this week. Johnny has now painted himself as the number one villain in the house. Everybody hates him pretty much at this point, except for his angels, and he is kind of reveling in that role right now. And he is, really just starting fires where he can in order to just cause as much chaos and drama as he can in the house while he is still there. We get to the challenge, and TJ goes into his normal discussion. This week's challenge is called Building Bridges, and it's definitely going to be a physical event. It's basically an obstacle course built on and on top of big Connex boxes. So TJ goes into his description. Their first task is to go ahead. They got to climb a rope bridge, a cargo net, in order to get up to some footholds and rock climb their way up to a rope ladder, and then get on top of the first set of Connex boxes. From there, they have to jump to some steps to get across to the next set of Connex boxes, where they will grab onto a pole fireman style and traverse that down. They have an opportunity. There's a ledge about halfway down for them to go ahead and try to get off there and circumvent half of the obstacle. Or they have to go all the way down to the bottom and then work their way back up using some ramps that are put into the side of the Connex box. On this box, there's also 3 gold coins that they have to collect. They have to deposit those in the top of the Connex box when they get there, and then they have to do a puzzle, at which point they can hit a buzzer, which will bring up a bridge to get them over to the next set of obstacles. The next set of obstacles is a rope that they must go down, collecting, again, gold coins as they go down to the bottom, and then they'll have to work their way back up a rope ladder to get to the top. Jump across and grab onto a punching bag, essentially, work their way across to the top of that obstacle, and then take a rope swing down to knock over the final obstacle, which is a bunch of boxes that are stacked down at the bottom. Whoever does it the fastest is going to win. If you fall off at any point, then your time will stop, and it'll be based on, who got where the farthest, if they're all unable to finish. TJ reminds Michelle that since she was last in the last challenge, that she will be starting with a 30-second time penalty, and then they do a random draw, and Johnny goes ahead and starts it off. Johnny goes ahead and really kills it. I mean, he's going first, so he hasn't actually seen it yet, and he's setting a pretty good pace. He's able to get through the entire thing without really any issues, and that's pretty much true for all of the men, except for Theo, who is just kind of like lollygagging his way all the way through the whole thing. But they all do make it through, and none of the men are assessed a time penalty. As we see with the women, Jenny is the first one to go. She flies through it with no problems whatsoever. And then we see Kara's coming up, and you would think Kara, with all of her experience and all of her muscle, should be able to go ahead and get this done. Now, she is a bit on the smaller side. I think she's around 5, somewhere between 5'3" and 5'5". Not as small as Aviv, who's 5'2", but definitely not as big as Laurel, who's 6 feet tall. So she's somewhere in the middle. But she has trouble immediately. She gets up the cargo net and gets to the handholds and then falls off. Like, what's going on there? Then you see Naya, Olivia, and Michelle also have the same issues. So really now we're looking to see who of those 4 is going to end up being the worst. Because Tori brings up the rear, and she blazes through that thing with no issues at all, as does Aviv, who I said is 5'2". So all the other females are able to make it through, except for Kara, Naya, Olivia, and Michelle. And those latter 3 are all in the hot seat, so hopefully none of them come in last place. Once everyone has completed, TJ goes ahead and announces the winners. For the men, it was really a tight race between Kylan and Johnny, but ultimately Kylan goes ahead and wins it for the men. And then for the women, it's between Jenny and Tori, and by a 6/100th of a second, Jenny's able to go ahead and pull off the win over Tori. So that puts Jenny in a really good spot because now she's able to kind of go ahead and lord it over Naya, who hasn't really done much to her, but she feels that Michelle and Olivia, being from her era, have really wronged her by continuing to put her up as a target when they were still in their teams. So now she's ready to kind of return the favor at this point. So that deliberation is going to be pretty interesting. Then TJ announces who the losers are. For the men, it was Theo. So Theo's going to get a 30-second time penalty next week. And then for the girls, it ends up being Naya. So Naya's automatically thrown into the deliberation for that night. And she knows she's going up against either Olivia or Michelle, who are also part of her Ladies of Leisure Alliance. So there's going to be some tears. And Naya is Kylan's girlfriend, so now he has to decide who is going to go against her and possibly send her home. That evening, they of course go out in town and they're at the bar, and as normal, they're all talking about what's going to happen in the deliberation room. But then it gets crazy, and everybody starts kind of going after Johnny, especially Olivia. Olivia wants to know why she was called a snake, and Johnny's like, you took that out of context. I mean, he straight up called her Devin's pet snake and then said her name. So I don't know how she took that out of context. Which then, opens Johnny up. He starts getting really defensive, and he just starts throwing daggers all over the place. And he lands two on, one is on Jordan and one is on Tori, and basically calls them out for being the ringleaders of basically the other big alliance in the house, and tells everybody that, you're not in their top four. Their top four are each other, as well as he says Rachel and Aviv is Jordan's top four with Tori. And then for Tori, Jordan's her number one. And then he's not quite sure, but she has made deals with all of the men. So she can't have 6 people that she is protecting all of the time. Tori gets very upset with this and starts going off on Johnny. So there's probably going to be some more explosions further down the track here as we go through the episodes. But Johnny has definitely painted himself into a corner, and he's going to be fighting out of that corner for the rest of the time that he is on this season. We then go to deliberation, and Jenny, basically calls out both Olivia and Michelle, says that they're happy that they're in this position and she can't wait to throw one of them in. To which Michelle takes offense and says that she has done nothing but, try to protect Jenny and be nice to her, and that's all just BS. But at the end of the day, it is Kylan's decision as to who's going to go in, because, again, if they can't decide on who that person is going to be, he gets to make the decision as the opposite sex. So really, Kylan is the decider in all of this. Jenny has no power. And he ultimately chooses Michelle to go in for a couple different reasons, but mostly because Michelle said she's okay with it, and she is a lot smaller than Naya. I mean, when you see the two next to each other, Michelle basically comes up to her shoulder. So if it is a physical competition, Naya definitely has, a fighting chance in this. We go to the elimination, and as everybody walks in, you can't really tell what it is. You just see 2 piles of boxes on either side of the arena, and 2 empty boxes that clearly they're going to have to move those boxes into those other areas, which we learn are the designated areas. So it is going to be somewhat of a physical challenge, to which Naya definitely has the leg up. As TJ explains it, yes, it's called 40fication. So it's a combination strength and math challenge. So some of the boxes are chained together, and using the math equations that are on the boxes, that'll give you the combination to go ahead and unlock the combinations. So Michelle is definitely going to have a leg up in this one because she's definitely the better one with the puzzles. But Naya is the more physical person. She's definitely going to have the leg up when it comes to actually moving those boxes. As TJ blows the horn, they obviously both start doing the math problems, and it just looks like Naya is struggling from the jump. And Michelle just starts, rocking out these problems and getting these locks undone and pulling the chains through these boxes. She then starts moving the boxes, and it seems like she gets about half of them done before Nia pops her first lock and is able to start doing something at that point. So Michelle's built a very big lead that Nia now has to dig herself out of. Nia does a very good job of popping the next couple of locks and starts moving boxes, and it looks like she's starting to catch up on Michelle, but ultimately that lead just proves to be too much, and Michelle's able to go ahead and get that win, which, I'm not going to say is too surprising, because, she really is pretty good with those math problems and was able to build up such a lead. So now that Michelle holds all the power, I think we all know who she's going to throw in. So clearly she throws in Johnny, and then it's kind of a fielder's choice at that point. But she surprises everybody and chooses Jordan to go in as a target next week as well. And then Nehemiah is kind of like the throwaway vote at that point. So it'll be very interesting to see next week what happens. Obviously, at this point, Johnny, if he doesn't win, he has to expect to be one of the targets every time it's a men's week. If he can win next week, that'll just make it that much easier because he'll be off the block. But he just has to expect at this point that he's going into every arena that he is eligible for because of that target that he has painted on himself. It'll be curious to see how everybody does and how this really blows up between Jordan and Johnny, because I just feel like those two are going to come to a head now that Devin is gone. But with that, that's the end of this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like it and tell your friends about it if you did.